Good morning. We'll get started in just a second. All right. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and this is our first meeting on the shift book. Part one. We're going to discuss part one today. Probably a really good time to start discussing the shift with it kind of right on our doorstep. So when what do you think about when you hear the word shift? There are so many different explanations out there, so many different views when they hear the shift is coming. So what do you think about when you hear the word shift in our market shift? There's a couple of them. Is it the shift from buyer's market to seller's market, or vice versa? I mean, we've all seen that. I mean, we do that every year, right? Those are called seasonal cycles, month-to-month shifts. Um, those happen every year. What does that look like? Seasonal cycle look like? Surprisingly, it really happens in most markets the same way. Sometimes the economic factors affect the normal seasonal cycle, but it pretty much, for the most part, runs the same way. You have that buildup of inventory from January to April. Uh, right after the first of the year, start getting all these homes ready to list, get them on the market. We got this hot sellers market in that time where we're still in it. We're still in that hot market in general. It's a buyers, it's a sellers. It's not balanced. It's just that it's a great time to sell because there's low inventory, and it's a great time to buy because money's cheap, interest rates are cheap. There's all kinds of grant programs. So that's what we're benefiting from right now, because with the lack of inventory, we should be having a hard time getting buyers. Okay, because it's a seller's market. But since the buyers have all these benefits to buy now, we're in a perfect world. So then the decline in inventory from May to October, or the decline in homes going on the market, basically. And then we get an uptick towards the year end. So everybody experiences this. It happens every year, yet we keep getting surprised when the days on market start accumulating come July and August. We don't understand why the showing activity slowed down. Okay, that's because the inventory is getting higher. and it's shifting. We're going to talk about, the effects of the shift in this book, but we need to understand what shift means. So we have that seasonal cycle, the seasonal shift, the month to month. What other shift do we have? What other shift? What's the shift that's coming? The one that Gary Keller's talking about, the one we hear people getting worried about, the shift. There's an economic shift. These ones happen year to year. So there's a lot of effects on that. Does anybody know the difference between the buyer's market, seller market, and balanced market? Does anybody know what that looks like, the numbers? Does everybody understand months inventory when they hear Michael Orr or anybody talking about the market and saying how many months inventory we have? Basically, if someone comes to me and says we have 4 months inventory, that means if we didn't list any more houses in the next 4 months, we'd run out of homes to sell in 4 months. So a buyer's market is 7+ months inventory. It means there's a lot more homes. Balanced market comes up between 5 and 7 months. And then a seller's market is anything less than 5 months inventory. I don't remember in the past 2, 3, 4 years being over 5 months of inventory. We've been in a major seller's market, but luckily the government has thrown all these programs out there for buyers to buy at low interest rates and free money over the past 4 years that we've been able to benefit from it being a seller's market and having tons of buyers and being able to sell homes overnight. When they hit the MLS, we get 4 offers in our inbox as long as they're priced right. So that's not normal. That is definitely not normal. But we'll take it while we get it. So the economic shift from year to year. It locally, all of us end up, it feels like it happens overnight. And it does happen a little faster on a local level. A lot of it, though, is because we don't pay attention to the analysts who are looking at it on a national level, because on a national level, they see it and it's a gradual transition. But here locally, it feels like it just came in and we didn't see it coming. What are some of the factors that cause these economic shifts? What is something that could play into an economic shift, cause a drastic change in our market from one year to the next? There's a really big one coming up right now. There's one that's been playing in, one that just started, one that's going to happen soon. What about currency exchange rates? Kind of a little unrest in the world over the past year about, the world market and the currency and the changes in that. Canadian dollar is less than American dollar. Really a good gauge of the world economy being on balance is when the dollar regains that top value. During the downturn when the dollar was less than the Canadian dollar and less than the euro and all that stuff, we're getting back to a normal market. But everybody freaks out at all the changes. The stock markets, foreign stock exchanges going down, the Greece. There's always something happening in the world that causes people to freak out. Deanne's right. Political climate. That's a big one. That's a big one that's coming. It always affects it. Always affects the market. An election, whether it's positive or negative, whether the result of the election is positive or negative, it still has an effect on the real estate market. So currency exchange, that's happening. Political climate, that's happening. Primary global effects. Britain just exited the European Union. That's a pretty big hit right there. That's a big change. So now we got three. We're 3 for 3 right now. Interest rates. Interest rates are actually dropping because of the British exit, because people are moving money around right now, and the banks need to get some money back, so or they need to actually loan more money out because people aren't taking loans, they're buying bonds. So their interest rates are falling. Cheaper to borrow money from the banks. Inflation. I think we got a little inflation going on over the past few years. Inflation leads to recession. I mean, that's a perfect storm if we get a Republican elected, which is really great and comes with problems too. We know that every time a Republican gets elected after 8 years of a Democrat, then there's going to be some sort of recession. And with the inflation that's been happening, there's definitely, I mean, even if a Democrat's elected at this point, it's almost, no brainer that a recession is going to happen. And then population, household income, jobs, all of that affected too. But I mean, we are at least 5 out of the 6 factors for a shift. It's going to happen. It is going to happen. That is definitely a slam dunk for an analyst to say shift's coming. Okay. So what's the result of these shifts? We can go out and get a listing. We can find someone who wants to sell their house. But what do we need? We need buyers. The shift causes buyer demand to fall. The election. People are uneasy about the interest rates or the economy. They don't want to go out and make a major investment. They want to see what happens. Interest rates go up. Buyer demand goes down. Affordability, perception. Perception is the big factor here of the buyers and us as agents in this shift. So if the buyer's perception is that there's trouble in the economy, they're not going to go out and buy and get a loan. If the buyer's perception is too expensive to get a loan, they're not going to get a loan. If the home prices are too high, they're not going to buy. Okay. So when the buyer demand goes down and we have a bunch of listings, I mean, if we can't bring buyers, are we going to be able to list homes? We're going to end up in an unmotivated market where we have an unmotivated seller and an unmotivated buyer. And we're going to talk a lot about that in part 2. But, it creates fear with the agents. The shift creates fear. It creates fear before it happens and during the shift until we pull out of it. And the only way to combat fear is what? How do we get past the fear of the shift? How do we get past the fear? We need to understand the shift. Need to understand the shift. So we talk about the law of equilibrium. The amount of transactions and the agent count, the licensed agent count, are directly related. So if we have a high number of transactions, we're going to have a high number of licensed agents. Okay. What is not equal is the lag. So let's start at the bottom and we start going up. We get to the top, we have thousands of transactions going on and we have thousands of realtors. All of a sudden the shift happens and there's less transactions. So the amount of the agent count lags the business, the transaction part of it. So now, as soon as we start this shift, we have a lot of agents and less transactions, less deals, opportunities. So our chances of, success on certain deals, on listing appointments, on finding buyers and working with buyers and lead gen and all that, it becomes difficult. It becomes a challenge. That's what we call the survival period, is when transactions drop and we still have a lot of agents, because the agent count will equal out, okay, eventually. So when we hit bottom on transaction count and that agent count is slowly coming, we're surviving. All right. And then when the agent count hits equilibrium with the transaction count at the bottom, less transaction, less agents, all of a sudden the market takes a shift and heads back up. Well, this is where the benefit is. This is called thrive. Survive, then thrive. Once those transaction counts start taking off, the agent count lags. The law of equilibrium. So now we got a lot of deals and less agents. So this is where our businesses grow. This is the growth period. All right. So the idea is to be able to take a hit and stay standing. Okay. Don't get knocked down. It's not about coming into the market, taking 3 steps forward, and then the shift taking you 4 steps back. You'll be out of the industry. And if you take 3 steps forward and every time there's a shift, it takes you 3 steps back, you're getting nowhere in the industry, but you're surviving and you're in pain, constant pain and struggle. But if you take 3 steps forward and only take 2 steps back at each shift, you are thriving, you're building, you're growing. So we need to be in the point to where we can get knocked back, but not knocked down. That is how we grow in the industry. All right. So what are some ways we can thrive or survive this shift? What has got me excited about this shift? Agents are going to flock to teams and larger brokerages for support. Smaller brokerages are going to struggle and falter. Small teams and independent agents are going to struggle and falter. But when you're on a team and you have that support, and the team has marketing dollars, and the team can do things, you have that going to the listings, you got these big teams that can do so much for that listing. It's almost a no-brainer. You walk in and get the listing signed because these independent agents can't afford, or their business is suffering, and they'll just do anything and they can't back it up. So the teams are going to grow. The teams are going to thrive during the survive period. So again, we survive when the shift starts, and we thrive when we come through it. We just have to be ready. We have to understand. We have to forecast this shift. We have to know. We have to see the signs. And this book is going to take us through the signs so we can be educated and know when it's coming and when we're coming out of it. Because, it's one thing to survive this shift, but where we only take 2 steps back instead of 3 is when that market turns and we're ready for it and we jump and we take advantage of it. So we take the hit, we gain market share, we fortify our relationships during this shift, we focus on the relationships, we do more lead gen, and then when we hit the thrive, we thrive times 10 because we're in position. We are getting referrals. We have leads that we've been working on and driving into the database and dripping on. So when that shift happens and we get back to a motivated market, we are thriving. So you should be begging for shifts, planning for them. Build your business around shifts, hoping for that shift to come because you're ready for it and you know how to do it. That's understanding, that's education. It's natural business growth. It's attrition. It's a course correct. It's it's normal. The market does corrections. Every time there's a correction that's needed and people freak out for 3 days because there's a major drop in the Dow or the NASDAQ and nobody can explain it except for they say, well, it was time for a correction. It's been time for a correction in our market. It's been really good. It's been blowing up. It's been constant. And we're really in a perfect storm for a shift. Perfect situation. So many, you know, key factors that play into the shift. We're almost at 100%. Guaranteed shift coming. So do you just sit there and wait it out? It's like, well, the shift happened. There's less people buying. I'll just wait it out. I'll hopefully close a couple deals here and there. No, you step it up. You go after, push hard in lead generation. Because if you're not out showing homes or writing contracts, you got more time to lead gen. Keep building and working harder, and you're still going to find those buyers. They're just, you know, in the muddy waters, and you're still going to find those sellers, those motivated ones. Okay, there's buyers and sellers out there, but that doesn't mean they're motivated. We got to find the motivated ones. So we step up our lead gen. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the shift? What about the shift that's coming? Anybody have any questions? All right. Well, that was part one. That was basically explaining the shift, the two types of shifts and why we shift and what to look for. And since we're in the perfect environment for the shift, it's coming. So next time we're going to talk about part two, you know, how we survive and thrive in this shift. And you guys are all in a great position because you're on the team and you're always going to have that support. You're going to have, your hands on great lead generation. And these pop buys are really going to come into, they're important. Because during this shift, we need to be real purposeful about our relationships and build those. Because we need every deal we can get, every good solid lead, all the motivated buyers and sellers we can find. All right. So, you know, that's kind of why Mark and I made the decision to shift from marketing dollars to relationship and service. Put more money into that. Build your guys' business there. It's a more solid foundation. So yes, there's plenty of internet leads out there. There's plenty of people to call, plenty of FSBO opportunities. But during this shift, we need to double down on our relationships. So we will see you next time. We'll cover part two of shift. Hopefully that helped and got you some good understanding of shifts and why they happen. If you have any questions about the shift that's coming soon or what to look for or why it's happening, what the details are, let me know. Post on Facebook. We can discuss it there. Other than that, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time.